All right, good evening. I appreciate y'all sticking around. The Senate and House Republican caucuses have come to an agreement on pro-life legislation. The bill will become public later tonight as a conference report to Senate Bill 20. We're working on getting final signatures, and the bill will be released sometime later tonight. Before we get into the details, I want to recognize the work our members have done to come to this consensus. It's been an arduous process, but as you'll see, the bill that has been developed is a common sense, reasonable approach to restricting second and third trimester abortions and addressing maternal and infant care. I'll let other members of the General Assembly go over the details of the bill. First, Speaker Moore will have some remarks, and then some of our members will then detail the bill.
Thank you, Senator Berger. Good evening. You know, after the reversal of Roe, determining abortion restrictions was left to the states, as it frankly always should have been. We do not take this responsibility lightly, that for the first time in 50 years, the North Carolina General Assembly is having to address this most difficult and controversial issue at times. I'm very proud of the way that we have done this in a very holistic way, where we have dealt with not only the issue of abortion, but also health care when it comes to mothers, health care of children, and really trying to provide a comprehensive approach in a way that is compassionate. This bill does address abortion, as will be more fully discussed, but it also includes mental health care, paid parental leave, and many other things to support women for parents. The women standing here today represent the diligence and hard work that the members in both chambers have accomplished that have resulted in a truly comprehensive piece of legislation. It is a mainstream piece of legislation that we believe enjoys broad support among the people. Very proud of the hard work they've done, and with that, I'll turn the floor over to Senator Crockett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you all for being here. Last year, when the U.S. Supreme Court handed down the Dobbs decision, those of us who have been working to save lives of unborn babies for decades saw a great opportunity. An opportunity to put forward pro-life, pro-woman legislation. Here in North Carolina, our archaic abortion laws date back to the 1970s in response to Roe v. Wade. Since then, our laws have allowed abortions through the second trimester of a woman's pregnancy. That is unacceptable. We have the opportunity to save many lives. We have the opportunity to provide women and families options that they haven't had before. We have the opportunity to show them that children are not burdens, they are the greatest joy of your life. And we have the opportunity to modernize our pro-life laws. Since Roe was decided in the 1970s, there have been countless medical achievements that have made it possible for babies to survive earlier than the viability standard that was set by Roe. It's time for North Carolina to take the next step forward in honoring the sanctity of human life. That is what we're doing with Senate Bill 20, the Care for Women, Children, and Families Act. This bill is a comprehensive plan to support women, children, and their families. It will undoubtedly save life and improve health outcomes for many pregnant women. According to the Charlotte Lozier Institute, the clear norm among countries that permit elective abortion is to limit abortion to before 20 weeks gestation. An elective abortion is more commonly limited to 12 weeks, the first trimester. Another way to look at it is like this: 184 out of 198 countries and territories, that is 93%, limit elective abortions after the first trimester or do not permit elective abortions at all. North Carolina will join these ranks. This bill restricts elective abortions in the second and third trimester and provides for exceptions in the case of rape, incest, to save the life of the mother, and for life-limiting anomalies. This is widely supported by North Carolinians. A March 2023 poll found that 57% of North Carolina voters support this position. This bill also puts requirements in place to ensure the health and safety of women. Now I'll turn the podium over to Representative Sarah Stevens.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The additional material in this bill will be some funding to help with crisis pregnancy centers. There's $3.5 million for contraception, $2.8 million for reducing maternal morbidity, and adoption tax credits. There's a distinction between chemical abortions and surgical abortions. Chemical abortions are those where you take a pill and you need to do it in the doctor's office. The medical abortions, surgical abortions, will be for things after 12 weeks where there's the rape, incest, or life of the mother, or fatal fetal anomaly. Those will be done in a surgical center, a center rising to surgical standards. We do have care for the babies with the adoption and foster care. We have an adoption task force to try to make that easier. We have a foster care boost in funds for $25 million. We have child care grants going up to $32 million. We have finish line grants for college for students who get pregnant. We've increased some of the safe surrender language. We include the Born Alive bill, and we have you can't get an abortion for any eugenics type person or if it's pain capable. So we are pleased that the unborn will be recognized as having a fundamental right to be born, and mothers will get our unconditional support. It's time to catch up with the science that affirms parenthood before birth. This is a pro-woman, holistic approach. It's equipped with as much information, as many options as we could give at this point, and focuses on the health and safety of the child. I think at this point it might be appropriate to take questions, and we'll all stand for them. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Representative Stevens. So this proposal focuses on the health and safety of women and children. We know that oftentimes women feel like they don't have options when they're faced with an unplanned pregnancy. But we want them to know that they do have options. And so this bill will include nearly $160 million to reduce infant and maternal mortality. We have increased access to contraceptives, provide paid maternity and paternity leave to teachers and state employees, increased funding for foster care families, money for kinship families, care, adoption, support for new mothers in community college and child care, as Representative Stevens said. So beyond the funding, this would create reasonable regulations on abortion in North Carolina. I'm trying to skip over some of the things that you already covered, but abortions are serious medical procedures and should be performed in safe, sanitary, and suitable facilities, and they will be regulated like they should be regulated like any other medical procedure to protect women. If a woman experiences complications, she needs to be there in an appropriate facility to get care as quickly as possible. So after the first trimester, we know that complications rise from abortion, and they increase substantially. So women can suffer from all kinds of complications, and doctors in North Carolina have seen young women come into emergency rooms with severe complications that have required them to perform hysterectomies. So these women's lives are forever changed, and that's why this legislation has guardrails in place to ensure that abortion clinics meet the same standards as other health care facilities, and requires a woman to give her informed consent before a physician can move forward. As part of that informed consent process, a woman is walked through the risk associated with an abortion. A doctor is required to share the information about how far along her pregnancy is and risk related to pregnancy, carrying the pregnancy to term. This bill will affirm a woman's right to see an ultrasound and prohibits a clinic from denying her that right because of a clinic rule or policy. All of this must be done in person before a woman can consent to a surgical or medicated abortion. Informed consent process is vital to ensure a woman understands the procedure that she's about to go through and has a chance to learn about alternatives. Too often women are told that abortion is the only option. Again, there are other options. They are rushed to decide without understanding the options open to them, including adoption and resources to support her and her baby. So when it comes to medical abortions or chemical abortions, a doctor would be required to examine the woman in person and must be present when the first abortion-inducing drug is administered. Anytime a doctor prescribes a new medication, they want to see patients after a certain period of time to make sure that it is working and how it is working. Abortion-inducing drugs will be treated the same way. After a chemical abortion, the doctor must schedule a follow-up appointment in the next 7 to 14 days. Informed consent is also required in instances where a woman is seeking an abortion because her child has a life-limiting anomaly. A life-limiting anomaly, as defined in the bill, is a diagnosis by a qualified physician of a physical or genetic condition that is defined as a life-limiting disorder by current medical evidence and is uniformly diagnosable. Finding out that your child will have a life-limiting, and I hate that word, anomaly, can be earth-shattering. Doctors will be required to share with the woman who's considering an abortion and will be given information about her child's condition and the likelihood of survival outside of the womb and provide any referrals for care after the child's birth. These are all common sense requirements to ensure a woman understands her pregnancy and her options. So,
Now we will take questions.
Does the bill specifically assign a numbered week limit for a cutoff?
Yes.
And what is
Yeah,
that?
12 weeks for normal abortion, up to 20 weeks for rape or incest, 24 weeks for any life-limiting anomalies or emergencies.
And no limit on the life of the mother's life is in danger, then there's no.
Yeah, no limit if the mother's life is in danger.
On the life of the mother, how will that be defined? How do you define the risk to the mother's life?
It would be the doctor's decision.
But it must be physical.
Must be physical, yes, not emotional.
Yeah, Dr. Baker?
The burden of proof for rape and incest, what would that be? I mean, other states have, required people who have gone to court. What would the burden be?
Our legal staff will answer that.
Thanks. At this point, we have said that the doctor who's performing an abortion after 12 weeks simply puts in the issue of rape or incest. That then gets reported to Department of Health and Human Services. So that is between the doctor and the patient. And it simply will be reported as part of information we will be collecting. Representative Baker, did you want to talk about the mother and the baby fetal anomaly and life of the mother? I didn't see anything more you want to say about that.
Thank you so much. No, I think that you've done a great job. I think that the message we want to get across here is that life of the mother is eminently prioritized, and it always is, but I think it's especially important that when we're looking at this bill, we are protecting the mother and we are protecting the baby. And we are also upholding medical procedures that have been in practice for decades and have shown to be effective in protection. And so I know there was a mention of chemical abortions, and so to be clear, this bill does not change at all the statute around chemical abortions in North Carolina. I think that's a question that's been asked a lot of times. And in North Carolina, we have already had in statute that for a chemical abortion, when that first pill is delivered, it must be delivered in the presence of a physician. And that's particularly important because, as I'm sure many of you know, there are issues like ectopic pregnancies that if a woman takes the pill at home, not in the presence of a doctor who has confirmed that it's a pregnancy in utero, because the side effects of that chemical, mifepristone is the name, because the side effects of that are known to be bleeding and cramping, then the woman doesn't realize when she's taking it at home and has not had an ultrasound and has an ectopic pregnancy, that if she takes that pill at home and begins to have bleeding and cramping, she doesn't know when to raise the flag and when that becomes emergent, and these women can die at home. So again, that has been in North Carolina statute for years. So the woman comes in, is evaluated by the doctor, there's confirmed to be an in utero pregnancy, and then there are 72 hours. She comes back, and then she can receive the medication so it keeps her safe. So again, everything that we're doing in this bill prioritizes the mother along with the baby. So I appreciate opportunity to clarify that. Thank you.
What are the penalties for any patients or medical providers that don't follow these new guidelines?
Legal staff?
With the doctors, there can be a $5,000 fine, and there can also would be a report to the medical society of not following the medical dictates.
Is, all the women here, does this mean that you all, is everyone here, that means you were part of the working group between the chambers, and what was the range of the type of restrictions that you discussed over these months?
Conception to birth. We talked about everything. What went too far, what didn't go far enough, and where we could finally come to a consensus was 12 weeks.
Is seeing an ultrasound a requirement to be able to do that?
Yes.
To be able to continue with an abortion, you have to see.
Yes.
And you have to have a 72-hour waiting period.
Yes.
She has to be offered to see it.
She has to be offered to see it. You can't take a policy that the abortion clinics frequently have had of, we're not even going to show you. No, it's going to be here. But you have to offer it so that they can know what it is and where they are. So you have to have the ultrasound.
Yes. When can we expect to see final votes on this proposal?
Thursday.
So what's the rationale for not having the normal committee process, public hearings, amendments, et cetera, on this bill?
We worked at it long and hard for 5.5 months. We took into account of what was going on, and we didn't feel like it needed to be dragged out that much further.
And obviously, there's some folks that weren't in the room for those discussions, but elected and otherwise.
Certainly.
Our caucuses chose working groups for so that we could dig deeper into it, and we spent a lot of time doing that. We talked with so many doctors. I don't even know how many doctors we've spoken with. So we got input from everyone. So it's been going on for a long time. The work group has been working hard.
Yes, sir.
Do you all have commitments from the entire Republican caucus in the House and the Senate to vote for this?
Yes, we do. Yes, sir.
On top of that, do you expect any Democratic support?
We anticipate there might be some.
And would that be in both chambers, or
I can't speak for the Senate, but I know that we've been working with some Democrats who feel this is maybe a reasonable approach.
How many Democrats were in the working group? What was the total size between the chambers of the working group?
We initially started with 20 or 30. Then we got down to a more narrow group. And I don't know that we had any Democrats at that point who were in the room with us.
This is about prioritizing women's health. Shouldn't this be left to an individual mother and her individual situation?
Well, to some degree it is, but there is also a baby that needs to be protected. And then we've chosen 12 weeks that recognize that this is a baby that needs some protection as well.
And also, you heard all the things that are in this bill. It is definitely pro-family, pro-mother, pro-baby. Women will have lots of options that maybe they haven't been aware of in the past. There really will be lots of offers for things that they, and most women on polling that I've seen say they would prefer to keep their baby if the circumstances were different. Well, they're going to be different because they're going to have a lot more options than they've had in the past.
And to that point,
yes.
Can I say something about the Democrats?